jokes about him using an iPad for the first time, putting this Twitter, but I'm a cardinal, so I gotta use an iPod. Ha 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 ha! Monkeys for everyone, yeah. Okay. Hey, did you hear what happened to the Pope when he went to Mount Olive? Popeye beat the hell out of him. Hey! The Pope shows up. Yes, he sees St. Peter. St. Peter asks who he is. The Pope says, I'm the Pope. St. Peter says, what? There's no name of the Pope in my book. And the Pope says, I'm the representative of God on earth. St. Peter says, does God have a representative? You didn't tell me. The Pope says, well, I'm the leader of the Catholic Church. St. Peter says, the Catholic Church. I never heard of the Catholic Church. Hold on, let me go talk to the boss. Hey, boss! Guy comes over, he says, well, there's this dude standing outside who claims he's your representative on earth. And God says, I don't have a representative, not that I know of. Let me talk to my son. Hey, Jesus! Jesus comes over and he says, what's going on? And they explain the situation to him. Jesus says, hold on, let me talk to this guy. 10 minutes later, Jesus goes and talks to the guy. Jesus comes back and he's laughing his butt off. He's saying, hey, you remember that fishing club I started 2,000 years ago? It still exists! Alright. The Pope dies and goes to heaven. Again. That's amazing. Pope dies and goes to heaven. He decides that he wants to read all the ancient holy scriptures, you know, from A to Z. And he starts reading the books, and all of a sudden St. Peter comes over and he sees the Pope crying. And he's like, Pope, why are you crying? And the Pope's like, they left out the R. And St. Peter says, what are you talking about? And the Pope says, it said celebrate. Oh. Wow. Haven't gotten a response this quiet since I heard Mother Teresa's confession. Alright, so, during a papal audience, a businessman approaches the Pope and he makes this offer. He says, change the last line of the Lord's Prayer from give us this day our daily bread to give us this day our daily chicken. Because the guy's from KFC, right? And the Pope says, no, not a chance. And the businessman says, oh, what about for $10 million? And the Pope says, no way, Jose. And the businessman says, how about for $50 million? And the Pope says, no way. And then the businessman says, how about $100 million? And the Pope says, well, okay. And the Pope goes and he talks to all his cardinals and he says, well, I got good news and I got bad news. The good news is we're $100 million richer. The bad news is we lost the Wonder Bread account. Okay. The patron saint of prop comedy. Okay, so the Pope. I lost. If only we had scriptures. So the Pope dies and goes to heaven.
Dies a lot.
The Pope is not a healthy man. He dies and he goes to heaven. And
What is Facebook down?
the Pope dies and goes to heaven. And St. Peter says, oh, I'm so sorry, we weren't really ready for you, so we don't have your quarters ready. You're gonna have to stay in this little studio apartment. And the Pope says, well, surely I'm the Pope. Why don't I get the master suite? And the St. Peter says, well, we got a lawyer staying in there. And the Pope says, I'm the Pope. I don't get the master suite. And the St. Peter, he says, well, Your Holiness, we got a lot of popes up here, but we only got one lawyer. All right, one more for you. One more. If I can find it. Okay. The Pope's getting into his limo one day, and he says to the driver, he says, hey, just once before I die, I would love to drive the Pope-mobile. And the driver says, well, okay, Your Holiness, and he gets into the back seat, the Pope gets into the driver's seat, and he starts driving the Pope-mobile, and then a cop, he comes over, and he pulls over the Pope-mobile, and he walks on over, and he says, mister, could you roll down your window? And he just turns around, and he goes back to his cop car, and he talks to his partner, and he says, hey, I think I pulled over someone really important. And his partner says, well, who do you think you pulled over? And then the cop says, well, I don't know, but the Pope's his chauffeur. is the feast of the Chair of St. Peter. This is a relic conserved in St. Peter's Basilica in the Vatican, enclosed in bronze casing that was designed by Bernini and executed between 1647 and 1653. The chair is meant to symbolize the office of the Pope as Bishop of Rome, an office first held by St. Peter and held today by Benedict XVI. It is the very symbol of the papacy. So on this feast day of the Chair of St. Peter, it is fitting, right, and just that I introduce our next Pope John the Last. Let's give it up for our next Pope, Pope John the Last.
Great shoes.
Give me some chants, Cardinal.
Chant.
Yes, you hold me.
Yeah, man.
No. I'm melting.
You are now all healed.
Careful there. You're great.
How do you know I recovered?
So we can't fall.
Thank you, Your Holiness. Should I make an announcement about the upcoming election? This is Carol Lee Conklin, our city councilwoman, very possibly the only council member who will vote like on my Facebook page. Keep that in mind in November. The secular and the holy. Wait, Dave. My work as an artist is about addressing serious issues by placing them in absurdist contexts. And nothing defines the word absurdist better than the state of the Roman Catholic Church in the 21st century. Quite simply, I want my faith back. I want it rescued from the dark and primitive prejudices it has fallen prey to. I want the Church to recognize women like Mary, the mother of Jesus, as human beings with full rights, either as priests or as responsible laywomen who can decide for themselves issues of their own bodies. We not only eat the body of Christ in Catholicism, but we have been consuming the bodies of women by imprisoning them in false moral judgments and by not admitting the simple truth that they have no need to have men make decisions for them. Universal suffrage is something we celebrate in the secular world. It should be celebrated in the world of the Church as well. And once we establish the rights of women in the Church, they will be able to perform the priestly rites of the Church. It follows that if we recognize people who are not like ourselves, that is, old white men, we must recognize people who have different sexualities as well. To be attracted to another person is a gift and a privilege, a transformation in the very meaning of being alive. To stand in the way of that attraction and those bonds is itself the truest definition of perversion. If the Church is founded on Christ's love, it must be founded on an honest understanding of sexual love. Let us abandon our notions of traditional marriage and celebrate any couple who wants to find shelter together in a hostile world. Marriage between a man and a woman, between a woman and a woman, and between a man and a man must become a core value of the Catholic Church. And once we establish the rights of gay men and women in the Church, they will be able to perform the priestly rites of the Church. And if we value marriage, it follows that we value married priests. There is no reason why we should not open the doors of our faith to domestic love and commitment, to role models, families, and stability. Faith exists to help us, not to stone us. Faith exists to feed us, not to starve us. Faith exists to celebrate us, not to denigrate us. I dedicate my candidacy to the Archbishop of Milan, Cardinal Carlo Maria Marchini, who died in 2012. He supported the use of condoms and asked that the Church reconsider its positions on gay relationships and divorce. He feared the Church would lose even more followers and wander even further backward into fear and hypocrisy. He was interviewed on his deathbed. That interview was published as a posthumous reproach to the Church he had spent his whole life serving. He said in that interview, "Our culture has aged. Our churches are big and empty, and the church bureaucracy rises up. Our rituals and our cassocks are pompous. The church must admit its mistakes and begin a radical change, starting from the Pope and the bishops. The pedophilia scandals oblige us to take a journey of transformation. Cardinal Marini refused a feeding tube in his last days, an action specifically against the teachings of the Church. The Church has become corrosive and divisive, the Vatican its Grand Inquisitor, and that is why a fool like me has to run for Pope. To restore justice, to celebrate every person, to mandate hope. I promise you that if elected, I will be the last white male pope in history. Dominus vobiscum et cum spiritu tuo, Adonai Machem."
Grazie.
I thank you.
And now a reading from St. Michael Arvé.
This is the Summa Theologica, an outline of the doctrine of the Vatican III, a letter for the faithful from Frank de Blase, chief theologian to Pope John the Last. And I quote, "I am honored to be considered for this point by His Eminence, and will do my best to guide and counsel him in his last-ditch, contrarian resuscitation of the Church. There is a lot of work to be done, and I beg your forgiveness and patience in this period of transition from Vatican II to Vatican III in the hands of Pope John the Last. Over the next few months, we will be reviewing, reaffirming, deleting, doubting, and retuning the precepts of the Catholic Church. First of all, we will completely eliminate shame. Shame is what got us here in the first place. Instead of blaming her boyfriend, the Virgin Mary blamed her pregnancy on God. What a drag for Joseph, God's cuckold. And the kid grew up being told he was the Son of God. What a mess. These following entries are random and in no particular order. I've even misspelled a few words to piss off the nuns that taught me and who are no doubt now spinning in their graves. This is only the beginning of the end. Masturbation is not a sin and will no longer be referred as such. In fact, it should be worked into the celebration of our new Vatican III faith. This will be referred to as the masturbation. Encyclical, or the edict of the encyclical jerk. Imagine, God said sends down his son to straighten things out on earth, and we kill him. Oh, what a bunch of fucking idiots. Yet in our remorse, we dance around, kneel before, wear gold interpretations of, and make the sign of the cross. What if we had given him the electric chair? Lethal injection. So from this point forward, we will no longer celebrate instruments of torture and death. As a symbolic movement to accompany blessings, we want to introduce the sign of the nipple, a circular gesture to signify eternity and the areola, followed with a point of the finger to indicate the nipple. Life, symmetry, sexiness. Perfect. This will also help the better understanding the seldom mentioned West. This will also help in better understanding the seldom mentioned wet t-shirt of Turin. Thank you. Casual Fridays? How about casual Sundays? In fact, the typical Liberace-esque regalia is to be phased out entirely. Those who insist on dressing this way will also be required to wear stiletto heels, nylons, and makeup. Talk about high mass. Yeah. St. Christopher is back in. Now, he's earned it. And while we're at it, let's canonize Anton LaVey. Good needs evil in order for good to exist. And Anton will be good for business. Now, speaking of business, it's the Vatican liquidation sale. Everything must go. There are bills to pay, and Pope John the Last wants to start fresh. One move will be the total redecoration of Vatican City in a hip, contemporary style, which will be available to all Catholics through the Pope's new furniture collection, Last by John, which will be available at Target retail outlets worldwide. Watch the web. Like Easter, Christmas will be celebrated on different days each year, and announced a few weeks prior to fuck with retailers' heads as they try to count down. Yes! Now, it's a busy go world, so we'd like to combine holidays and traditions. For instance, Groundhog Day and Easter. Jesus rises from the dead on the third day, sees his shadow, and there's 6 more weeks of winter. The Feast of the Assumption and the running of the bulls might be a good fit as well. We'll start working out the details real soon. And in an attempt to modernize eternity, plenary indulgences will be linked to your cell phone plan and will roll over from month to month. No losing any indulgences. And lastly, the Sistine Chapel will be turned into a handball court on holy days of obligation for extra revenue. And there will be more to come. Amen. Frank de Blase.
The Pontifiquettes. as Cardinal number 2, and Frank de Blase as the Chief Theologian and Business Manager for the Vatican, and Cardinal Yuk-Yuks, Spencer Christian. Now, there are sandwiches and cake.